Well, fiddly friends, I'm back in Wisconsin, my home state. I'm visiting for a wedding and for Thanksgiving, and wow, it's flippin' weird to be back. I'm in my dad's home now. This is the home that I spent much of my childhood in, from like my early teenage years on. My dad is elsewhere visiting his girlfriend, and so the house is totally and completely empty. And I am contemplating the Buddhist principle of impermanence, annica, change. What the hell happened? Where did the years go? My dad, to me, looks like when they take a young, handsome, middle-aged actor and they age that person with a bunch of hair dye and prosthetics. This can't be my father. It's my father hiding inside the suit, the disguise of an old guy. Change happens upon us, in us, all around us, and our lives that we look at on a granular, up close, day-to-day, moment-to-moment level. Suddenly, you have a moment like this when you come back to your childhood home and you realize, no, the whole big thing, the beginning of your life to the end of your life, it's happening a lot faster than you ever imagined. It's speeding on by. This is my personal experience of the principal teaching of annica, impermanence, change in Buddhism. One thing that's so interesting to me is to look around at all the objects in this house. So my mom tends to be very, very neat and orderly. My mom is the kind of person where I'm like in her house, which is like maybe 20 minutes from here, and I drink a glass of water and I put the water down, and then I look out the window, I come back and the glass of water is already in the washing machine and the ring of water on the counter has been wiped away. I'm like, you don't leave anything. It's like a 5-second rule in my mom's apartment. If it's sitting around on a counter or a surface for 5 seconds, she removes it. Whereas my dad is like, I just found a dead mouse in the kitchen, just sitting there hanging out. I don't know how long it's been there. It did not yet acquire a ripe and pungent scent, but I'm sure there's more of them around here that have. He just leaves stuff. Like, it's weird being here because clearly he left and it's like a snapshot in time. Whatever he was doing in that moment is now spread out everywhere. Like, for example, he must have had some kids here. I want to show you. It's my childhood fire truck. It's just sitting out on the floor here. There's also this childhood barn that I used to play with. I'll show you. So there must have been grandkids here playing with stuff before my dad left to visit his girlfriend. I don't know. It's the objects in my dad's house that I find so moving and touching and heartbreaking. Like, the man is everywhere in this place, and my mother is still here too. Just looked at a window and there's a cross hanging from it. I guarantee you that's not my dad's cross. He's not a man of religion. But there are just so many things here. Like, he went to Africa. He went to Africa recently, and that, I'm sure, came from Africa. There's these antiques everywhere, this wooden furniture everywhere. There's guns galore. There's a leather football helmet from, 1914? Did Teddy Roosevelt own this? Yeah, and like I said, I find it to be moving and heartbreaking to look at all these objects that belong to him, that signify his existence on this planet. And one day when he's gone, these objects will lose their gravitational pull to this spot, this place, this man's life. They will just be sold off at rummage sales, and they'll be auctioned or they'll be thrown out. And like a man's world will just completely and totally disappear. A life will completely and totally disappear, and new lives will be growing all around this place, probably in this house. Some relative will probably inherit this house, and the bones of the dead are plowed into the earth, and the dead person's objects are plowed into landfills, and the person's memories and the electrochemical currents in their brain that gave rise to them just disappear and fade. And this strange dream of life that we're all in right now both ends and isn't, and perpetuates and always is, and takes different forms with different people. It's the little things that kind of move me. Like, for example, he's got a little tin of bacon grease here. My dad is very keen on saving bacon grease for when a time comes where, speaking of death, our society unravels to the point where life as we knew it dies, and one does not have access to high-calorie foods because society is broken down. And so he's saving bacon grease now for that eventual moment. I actually have found a lot of people back here in Wisconsin that are kind of concerned that society as we know it is going to change soon, and that life as we know it is rapidly becoming very, very different due to political changes, technological changes, etc. I feel bad, like I'm making fun of my dad for that sort of philosophy that society is breaking down. I'm not making fun of him. Just my heart is slightly breaking as I just look around this house while he's not here, and I just see his presence everywhere. Like right here. As a family, we really were into the movie The Christmas Story, and I just found this. It just reminds me of my youth. Right next to this little statue, little toy, is a salt gun, by the way. I don't know if any of you out there know what a salt gun is, but it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's an air rifle that shoots salt. So if there's a fly on the wall, you pump this thing up, and then you point it and you shoot it, and the salt will blast the fly off the wall. It's a very fun way to get rid of pests. Maybe not very Buddhist, though. So it seems to me that we spend our lives trying to be certain kinds of people, to birth certain works of art or attitudes or political systems into the world. We try and cultivate certain relationships in our lives. We try to be certain people. We think certain things are important. I can see this when I'm hanging out with my relatives now, and it's a big family. So everybody is sort of auditioning their life for everybody else. Like, there are things that are top of mind for people, and when they're around family, they come out, right? Certain ideas about life or about society, and everybody's together sharing these ideas. And meanwhile, all of our lives are just blazing along at the speed of light, with or without us. No matter what we accomplish or create, there's an end point to the journey. And that's what all the objects in this house are reminding me of right now. It's like in Citizen Kane when they find the sled, and it's the name of the sled, I believe, is Rosebud. And everybody's trying to figure out what Rosebud means. It's like everywhere I turn in this house, I see a rosebud. I see an object that is literally like a moment in time, a moment from the past, like frozen. This object had importance and meaning when it was bought, and it was placed in this specific spot for a specific reason at a specific point in time. And when you're in an older person's house, you see so many moments frozen in time, like the family photo of my dad and my oldest sister on her wedding day, frozen in time. The picture, the gun that my dad bought on a family vacation back when he and my mom were still together decade upon decades ago, still hanging. Actually, it's right behind me on the wall here. Can you see it? Still hanging on the wall from when my dad put it there. I guess this particular trip has a poignancy for me. Seeing the objects in this house has a charge because I'm reminded of both my mother and my father and of the life and the house that they created together. And I think they both thought they were going to live out the rest of their lives in together. And then fate, as it were, if that's the correct word, if that's the name we're giving her, intervened and their lives split, went in separate directions. But the objects in this house still speak to the life that they built together, which is no more. Objects like this, I don't know if you can see this. It's an old coffee grinder that my mom bought many, many years ago, like an antique, and put on the wall. There's still coffee in there. I wouldn't recommend drinking that coffee. It's probably 14 years old. I can see my mom sometimes listening to all of us kids yakking and babbling, and as I was mentioning earlier, auditioning our opinions and our points of view for each other. And I can see my old mom sitting in the corner of the Italian pizza place we were at last night and listening to one of my relatives talking about the educational system in Wisconsin, and the conservatives think this, and a little bit loudly, perhaps, just so that everyone can hear, including my mom, who's somewhat conservative. And then I can hear young nieces and nephews talking about politics and literature. And I find myself sitting there thinking I'm a bit like some of these objects in my dad's house. I'm frozen in a moment of time. I'm almost frozen in the age that they're at now, when they're coming up out of themselves. They're in their 20s and early 30s, and they have something to say. I was just like that when I was their age. I wanted everyone to listen to me. I wanted to be admired. I wanted to be heard. And I exploded with my opinions and my ideas, and the older people just sat there who actually had something to say, and sat there quietly, realizing that time was sort of passing them by. And now I'm becoming one of those people. Time, I realize, as I listen to these young people who were babies when I was their age now, offering and sharing their opinions. And I find myself thinking, I've lived so long, I finally do have something genuine to offer on the topic upon which you are expounding, but I'll never get a chance to get my thoughts out or a word in edgewise because you are volcanoing. And I see my mom, even more silent, at the head of the table as I'm volcanoing my opinions. And how much must she have to say? How much, with the right question, will she offer? Will she share her mind, her heart, her soul, like this house, the objects of thought and memory, so charged, enriched, and meaningful inside her, just like the physical objects in this house are charged with meaning and memory. The day-to-day grind is so hard. Cooking, cleaning, making a living, getting out of bed and you're like, oh, that pain is still in my lower back. Realizing the time is passing you by, watching your parents get old, watching your kids grow up and not need you anymore, watching your career ambitions just remain basically unfulfilled, and realizing that in the end, where you're at now is sort of going to be the climax of your success story, and maybe you don't find it all that impressive, etc., etc., etc. When I come back home, this is interesting. When I come back home to my dad's house here, childhood home that I grew up in, and I look around, it puts everything into perspective. And each one of these objects feels precious. And it feels like an external reminder of moments in time, the preciousness of each moment in time, each fleeting moment of our lives. A little back pain, a little moment of despair, a boring conversation, all of it over time, moment after moment. The great wedding that we had, like the picture I just saw of my sister's wedding, down to the smallest moment of taking a dead mouse out of the kitchen. Like this is our life. This is our life. All these moments, moment after moment. So something I'm contemplating today is how I might want to just sometimes not be so concerned with the content of my life, with trying to change my life, with being distracted by or confused by or obsessed with the specific circumstances of my life, but rather just let life wash over you. Sometimes that's what you got to do. You just got to let it wash over you. I mean, there's an instinct or a feeling sometimes that we have to respond to the circumstances, that we have to change the circumstances, that we have to move our lives forward, right? We have to go somewhere. Baby, we're going, okay? I can see that in this house. We're going. It's happening. So today's the day. It's a Sunday. It's the Lord's Day. It's a day of rest. And on this Sunday, Lord's Day, day of rest, I'm really letting life wash over me as I walk around this old house, just letting it wash over me, just letting go and letting the river of memories take me wherever it wishes, and not drowning in the tears of sadness or nostalgia, but being in awe of the mechanism or the organism by which a moment becomes a month, becomes a year, becomes an era, becomes a life. And then that life This is annica. It's not a Sanskrit word or a Buddhist principle or teaching. It's these leaves out here that fell from the trees. And that's about all I got to say about that.